Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Grace. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. In this video today, I'm going to be talking about my experience living as a Black person in Denmark. And I'm going to be talking about the good things and the not so good things and just trying to give an overall picture of my experience there. I no longer live in Denmark, which I'll be getting into in another video. I've moved to another country. Today's video is directed mainly at Black people or maybe other people of color who are interested in visiting Denmark or maybe even moving to Denmark. I'm going to be talking about some pretty vulnerable things, and so I just ask that you keep the comment section respectful. Whoever you are, take a deep breath, drink some water, get a cup of tea or something to enjoy while you watch this video. And yeah, just make sure you're in the right headspace. I want to keep the comment section a safe space for everybody. So if I do see comments that are just mean or disrespectful, I'm going to be removing them. If you are tempted to leave those comments, I'm sending you extra good vibes because you need them. Okay, so without further ado, the structure of this video is going to be me giving a little bit of information about my positionality, what perspective I'm bringing to this video. Then I'm going to talk about my good experiences that I've had in Denmark as a Black person, and then I will go into the less positive experiences that I've had, both things that are just a little bit uncomfortable or things that were just really negative, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. Let's get started with a little bit about me, just again so you understand where I'm coming from in this video. I actually watched another video by a really nice woman named Asada who talked about her experience as a Black person in Denmark, and you should definitely go check out her video if you're looking for more of this type of content. I thought it was really great that she gave a little bit of information about herself, and I want to do the same because of course every Black person's experience is unique. We're not all the same. And yeah, I just want to be open about where I'm coming from. So a little bit about me. I am from the US, specifically New Jersey. I come from a suburban area that is like upper middle income. The town that I grew up in was mostly white and Asian, so I didn't actually grow up being around that many other Black people. I am from a mixed family, so my dad is white, my mom is Black. My experiences in Denmark started when I was around 16 or 17. I went to Denmark with my family to kind of explore my heritage a little bit because I am part Danish, and also to visit a friend. So we visited Copenhagen and Tønder. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. I always struggle with pronouncing it correctly. And that was my first time in Denmark. And then after that, I went again in the summer after I graduated high school. I was 18 then, and I went for around a month to, again, Copenhagen, also to Aarhus, and to Silkeborg to visit another friend. Again, in 2022, when I turned 19, I went to Højskole in Denmark for 6 months. I went to Branderup Højskole. Maybe you've heard of it. If not, it's a Højskole in the middle of Fyn, which is like kind of the middle landmass of Denmark. And if you don't know what Højskole is, if you're an American, maybe you could think of it as a cross between boarding school and summer camp, where you're staying somewhere and learning about different subjects that you usually wouldn't learn about as much in school. Live with people, eat together. It's a fun time. And I was there for 6 months. And then after that, I came back to Denmark and started university there. I went to the Copenhagen Business School for 3 years where I did my bachelor's degree. The degree was business, language, and culture. And yeah, so I was mainly in Copenhagen during that time. So in this video, a lot of my experiences are mostly focused on Copenhagen. I would say bear that in mind that this is not necessarily representing all of Denmark, although I have traveled quite a bit around to different areas in Denmark. I'm aware for the Danes watching this that Copenhagen doesn't represent the entire country, but these are just where my experiences are focused. Also for people visiting, keep that in mind that your experience might be different in the countryside or some other part of Denmark. And just to be super clear, I'm mentioning all of these things about myself because I know that every person's experience is unique. Other people might have had different experiences who are darker skinned, lighter skinned, who are men, who are non-binary. There's a lot of diversity within the Black community. Yeah, I'm not saying by any means that my experience is universal. I'm just talking about what happened to me. Let's start off with the positive things about living in Denmark as a Black person, specifically Copenhagen. Again, I feel like as a Black person, I never felt like my life was in danger because of the color of my skin or because of the way I looked. I don't want to say I'm setting the bar low, but I feel like if you're a Black American or if you're a Black person living in a country where you might have to fear law enforcement or just fear for people being violent towards you because of how you look, this is a huge positive in my opinion. I felt a little bit more at ease, which I'm very grateful for. I also noticed that, and I forget where I saw somebody else mention this as well, so I'm definitely not the first person to phrase this like this or say this, but I felt like people saw me first and foremost as an American instead of as a Black person once they got to know me. And obviously there's nothing wrong with being like acknowledged as being Black, I'm not saying that, but it was just interesting how people kind of prioritized my nationality over my ethnicity, which was new and kind of refreshing in a way. In the US, as a Black person, I feel like sometimes your Americanness can be questioned almost. People who knew me and knew that I was American seemed more to see me as an American. Like that was the first layer of my identity to them rather than me being Black. Also on the topic of identity and how I was perceived when I was in Denmark, I did notice that people generally perceive me as Black and not as mixed. And that's, I mean, I also felt that in the US as a mixed person around non-Black people. So it's nothing new, but I just thought I would mention it, that it seemed to be similar in Denmark as well. And I think this speaks to as well that people generally just didn't seem very focused on my ethnicity, which can be, again, kind of refreshing compared to living in a country that is very race focused or ethnicity focused. Like I don't feel like my identity was like ignored or it wasn't like a we don't see color type of thing, but it just like wasn't a main focus. I was also pleasantly surprised by the access to curly hair products and black hair care products in Copenhagen and also in other parts of Denmark, because there is, for example, a store called, I guess in English you would say normal, but in Danish I believe it's pronounced normal. And they have lots of curly hair products, and it's a big chain store, so they have it like all over Denmark, and they had brands like Cantu and then other curly hair brands, and they even had like satin pillowcases and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on what they're called, but like things that you can use like flexi rods and stuff like that. They had all sorts of hair products for curly hair, which was really, really nice to see. They had the eco gel, like everything was there, so it wasn't hard to find hair products as like I thought it might be. It made me feel a little bit more included and welcome there. I'm not so sure how it is in other parts of Denmark, but also in Copenhagen there were places where I could get my hair braided. I only actually ended up getting my hair braided once while I was there, and it was like through a friend of a friend in her living room. But there are places where you can get your hair done in Copenhagen. There also are African markets that you can go to, especially in certain neighborhoods like Nørreport. There are pockets of Copenhagen where there are more migrant communities, a lot more black people, usually from countries in Africa like Somalia, for example. At those places you can get your different foods that you might be looking for. Like I got lots of plantains that I have like my favorite African market that I would go to, and I could get plantains that actually were pretty good quality there and like were good enough to fry up and have them sweet. They also had other additional hair care products there for black people, and I saw other ingredients, you know, like palm oil, okra. It was surprisingly easy to find the ingredients that I was looking for. I'm Afro-Caribbean, so it was good to have those options as well. And just to reiterate this a little bit more, like there are black people in Denmark, especially in like the bigger cities in Copenhagen, but it is definitely not evenly distributed throughout the city. There's more ethnic diversity in certain neighborhoods over others. Another observation that I wasn't really expecting was that I felt a little bit more attractive, or I felt perceived as more attractive in Denmark than I did in the US. But that, again, I think comes from growing up in a town where there were very few black people. I generally felt very undesirable and unattractive living there. Like I dated a little bit, but I generally just didn't feel like I would be anybody's first choice. It could just be also because I didn't, like when I was living in the US, I wasn't old enough to drink, so it might just be because of that I didn't feel desirable, because I wasn't like going out to clubs and bars when I was 17, 18 years old in the US. I don't know what that experience would have been like there, but in Denmark, I felt like I was approached a lot more by men. Again, they didn't really seem focused on my ethnicity or like how I wear my hair or anything like that. Well, it was very frequently a conversation starter actually, like when people would say things about how they liked my hair, so that was really nice. And again, coming back to hair, I felt like people were generally very complimentary. Sometimes it was from men, and sometimes it was kind of unwanted attention, but also there would sometimes be just like I remember one time riding the metro and there were these two like older women there and they were just like, oh, du har flot hår, and that means like you have really like you have awesome hair basically, and that was really really nice to experience. But since we're talking about hair, I think this is a good point to move on to the uncomfortable things that I experienced there that weren't, I guess, more like microaggressions or things that were uncomfortable that are closely connected to my race and my ethnicity and being a Black person. Hey guys, so disclaimer, this section is going to talk a lot about hair, and that's just because there happened to be a lot of experiences revolving around my hair while I was in Denmark. And just for those of you who are unfamiliar with Black women's hair, it is something that has historically been policed, it's been politicized, regulated, it's been fetishized. So if you're just struggling at all to understand during this section why this was a sensitive topic for me, I wanted to give you a bit of that background. So on the one hand, I really appreciated that people were giving me compliments on my hair. It was very common, especially if I was wearing it out like in an afro. I'm not saying that it was bad for people to compliment me. Like, I think it's great to give people compliments, but just for me as someone that is a little bit more introverted and like, yes, I'm here making this video, but like if I had to talk about all this in front of like a group of people, like, oh my God, I would be sweating. I mean, I'm already sweating now, but like it would just be a rough experience for me. It's always difficult for me to talk about this in person with people, and it's much easier to talk to my camera. So sometimes for me, as someone who's a little bit more introverted, I don't always want to like, I don't want to be perceived. Sometimes I just don't want my appearance to be commented on, even if it's a positive thing. And again, like, thank you to all the wonderful people that gave me compliments, but sometimes if I wear my hair out, I don't always want it to be like a big deal, if that makes sense, because then I feel like I've become like hyper aware of my hair. I would get a lot of stares if I would wear my hair out, and people weren't being mean or anything like that. It was just a little bit uncomfortable for me sometimes to receive so much attention just for like existing as myself when I'm not like trying to attract it. I did get also like a lot of weird interactions with like random people. Like, I remember I had been dating somebody at the time and I was walking with him down the street in the area near where I lived, and I don't think these people were Danish. I don't know if they were living in Denmark, but they didn't have like Danish accents, so I don't know what the situation was, but we were just walking and this couple like stops me and my then boyfriend, and they asked me like, is your hair real? And I was like, yes, my hair is real. And they were just like, oh, okay, like that's really cool. And like they were being super nice and everything, but like I just don't always want that kind of attention from people. And I do feel also like I ran into instances of like fetishization a little bit with my hair, like guys making weird comments about how they want me to wear my hair a certain way because they like girls with like dreads, or like with, I don't wear dreads, but they thought my hair was dreads, and like just, it was just a little bit weird. Also, when I would go to clubs, so yeah, there were guys that would approach me and tell me that they liked my hair, which was nice. But then there were also instances where like I noticed once people had a little bit of alcohol, they would get very comfortable invading my personal space to touch my hair. And like, granted, I know people tend to get in people's personal space when they're drunk, so I'm not saying that that was like a racial thing, but there were many instances when I would be like out with friends and like a group, like a mixed group of guys and girls, and like suddenly the guys was like my guy friends would feel very comfortable just coming up to me and like grabbing my hair. Like when I would wear it in an afro, there were like a few times and they would just suddenly come and like grab like handfuls of my hair, and not like in a like, oh, like literally like this. And I was like, whoa, please get out of my space. And it's like, obviously, like I just said, people getting into their space when they're drunk a little bit more, but it's not like anyone was going to my friends with straight hair and grabbing their hair or like like literally fistfuls of it. So I was like, okay, it's not necessarily racist, but it's also like, this is definitely because I am a Black person with curly hair. That at that time I would wear out a little bit more. I started having like allergic reactions to synthetic fragrances, so then I had to change up how I was wearing my hair when I was in Denmark. And so I would do a lot more styles like these, or like just where my hair was like braided or twisted and it wasn't out and about. And I noticed that that actually changed my interactions a lot. Like, I wasn't getting the same like intense attention and like focus on my hair, which was refreshing, but it also then made me start to wear my hair like this almost as like a self-defense mechanism, because I just didn't want to be bothered by people. But again, going back to hair and like being out at clubs, there was also a time when I was with a group of friends and there was like a random person that like joined our group and we were all like dancing, and then like this guy comes up to me. I had my hair out, and he just goes up to me like this. I don't even know how else to like depict this, but he was really tall, and he comes over like this, and he didn't immediately touch my hair, but he was like asking permission to grab it, and I was just like, no. And I think I went like this or something, and he left me alone, so that was good. But like, yeah, I didn't always like appreciate receiving that kind of attention for wearing my hair naturally. And I will say, this wasn't only men that would do this. I actually had a couple of weird instances when I was at the eye doctor of all places. Like, you know, in the beginning when you go to the eye doctor and they do like the pictures of your eye, and there's just like a person that takes you through the different machines to like take pictures or check the pressure and all that kind of stuff. There was this woman who, I remember, I think once or twice I went there and I had my hair like in a puff on top of my head, and the woman, like, if she wanted me to like move my head closer, like instead of just like touching the back of my head or something, she would like put her hand on top of my head and like press down and like get a little fistful of my hair. And I was like, girl, like, what is going on? And that was just, I mean, I was kind of just amused, but at that point I was also getting a little bit tired of people like always trying to touch my hair, or like just things being about my hair. Like, I'm a person, there's so many other features of me that you can focus on. There were a few kind of negative experiences that I had around my hair, but this was very like anecdotal and not something that was very common. Like, I remember when I was at horse school, there was this girl there. I don't care if people ask me something, but it was kind of like the way she would, like her tone and like the way she would ask me these questions, it felt like I'll just try to do it. Like, she would be like, oh, how do you comb your hair, and like stuff like that. So it wasn't like a, oh, you know, do you brush your hair, do you like, how do you detangle it, or like, it wasn't like a curiosity kind of thing. Or if it was, it just wasn't like delivered in a way that was very friendly, and it sounded more of like somebody trying to like insult me almost than just to like get to know me or like learn something about someone different from them. I also remember I had another Danish friend who one time told me that he's like, wow, your hair seems like a curse. And I was like, okay. Oh my God, I can laugh now thinking about it, but I was like, bro, why would you say that to somebody? That's just not nice. Moving back to dating and like specifically with men, or like interactions with men, I was on Hinge. There were like also a weird number of guys who would like my profile that had pictures of them doing like some kind of volunteer thing in like countries in Africa. And I was like, um you do you. If you're being helpful, great. But like, it was just a little bit weird, the kind of attention that I was getting, and like that there were specifically like these types of guys that were like liking my profile and trying to interact with me. I wasn't sure how to interpret it. Like, is this somebody that just travels a lot, or like, are they kind of fetishizing me in a way? It was me and like some other girls that were all on like Hinge at the same time. We would, you know, like hang out and be like, oh, look at these people like together. And like, none of them were getting these guys, and they were not black. So I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but it was just a little bit strange. I get that it's already a mixed bag on dating apps where some people are looking for something casual. I get that, but like, I don't want someone to look for something casual with me because I'm black. I want someone to look for something casual with me because they think I'm like just a pretty person or attractive or seem nice. I don't know. I'm not like a flavor of ice cream to try. Okay, now I'm going to move on to some of the more like overtly negative experiences I've had. Again, I just want to remind people that this is a vulnerable topic for me. And if you are thinking about saying something mean or negative or trying to invalidate me, I would appreciate it if you just kindly clicked away from this video. And kept your thoughts to yourself. The most overtly racist experience I had, I was out with some friends and I was literally just like minding my own business. I was talking with my friends and we were like getting ready, I forget what we were doing. We were like getting ready to go somewhere else or whatever, like we were near like the steps of one of the metro stations downtown in Copenhagen. There were these two guys that walked past and like, they just like, they made a comment about like my ethnicity to me, and I was like, what? And then I was like getting kind of fed up because I think I mentioned a little bit earlier in this video that there were just a lot of like weird racially charged things happening to me at that point. And so I told them to F off, and they started just screaming like insults at me. And then like the last thing they screamed at me was the N word, like with a hard R. And I was like, okay. And I was so upset. Like I just started like crying because like nobody had ever called me that before. And I'm not saying that it couldn't have happened at home in the US, but it happened in Denmark. And I can't change that it happened. It did. I'm not saying that everybody would do this. I mean, it was also like these guys had probably been drinking, but like either way, it really hurt. At this point, I've moved on from it, but it still was like just a really horrible experience to have. And I know there's probably going to be somebody in the comments that's like, oh, you know, in Denmark, like we don't see the N word as like, I don't know, is this? It's just something we sing to in rap songs. Like, I don't care. I really don't care. It hurt me. And I can't change the fact that it hurt me in that moment. And I don't really want to hear anybody saying that word to me. I really don't want to hear anybody saying that word to me. I also had a really horrible experience at the doctor's office once that I don't even want to get into the details of because it's just like too personal. I was basically in a situation where I was being examined and I was in a lot of pain. The type of examination they were doing, like the pain that I was in could have very easily been prevented, like very, very easily. The doctor that I was with like did not care that I was like crying and like telling her that I was in a lot of pain. And you might be sitting here wondering like why I'm talking about this and like what does this have to do with my ethnicity. If you're a Black woman especially watching this who has lived or grown up in the US, you have probably read at some point about people assuming that Black women have a higher pain tolerance than white women or women of other races. When this first happened to me, I didn't really think about this, but then when I was talking to one of my friends from home, she was like, do you think this was because of you being a Black woman? And I was like, I don't know. And it was just too uncomfortable to think about at the moment, but like I don't know. I don't know if it was just a really awful experience to have. And like I am somebody who, like, I don't ever want to assume that something is somebody being racist to me. Like I want to go through the different possible reasons why something negative could have happened beyond just the way I look or like the color of my skin. But I genuinely couldn't think of anything else that maybe would have been a factor here. I mean, like maybe the woman was just mean and didn't give a poop about what her clients felt, but she wasn't. It was weird because afterwards she was like, oh, are you okay, like I'm sorry, blah blah blah. But like I was literally like crying and telling her that she was hurting me when it happened, and like she didn't care. So like I have absolutely no idea what was going on there, and I don't like to think that it could have been because of me being Black, but I also can't rule it out. So I'm just putting it out there for Black people who are thinking about living in Denmark, who might be getting medical care in Denmark, and to encourage people to like really oh my god, I wasn't expecting to get emotional. I want whoever you are to feel very comfortable being vocal about if you're in pain, if you're uncomfortable, if something is not working for you. Like please feel comfortable speaking up, or even if you don't feel comfortable, like try to fight through it and speak up for yourself and stand up for yourself in any situation, but specifically in this case in medical examinations or just medical procedures. Don't be afraid to make some noise and and stand up for yourself. The last thing that I will talk about from my time in Denmark that I feel like was like a genuinely negative experience that was like tied to my race was actually when I was graduating. I don't know if this is the case at every school in Denmark, but at my school, which is the Copenhagen Business School, for my program, our final exam was basically a defense of our bachelor's thesis. It's a project that's worth like half the credits of a semester. I like interviewed some companies about the like challenges they were having and opportunities and things like that as pioneer braiding hair companies that are looking to make braiding hair that is more consumer friendly, less toxic, and more environmentally friendly. What you need to know is that this was like essentially the most important day of my entire degree and the last day of my entire degree. And I was sitting in a room with my supervisor and the external examiner, who were both like older white men, and I was talking about my topic, and like this external examiner was just like he just looked like he didn't want to see me. Like my supervisor was fine, like he was chill, but like the external examiner, like, I don't know if he just like woke up on the wrong side of the bed that morning. I know he'd had to like travel some. Then when he was asking me questions about my topic, I don't even want to get into the details, but basically he was just bothered by the fact that I was focusing on Black women. And so I went out of the room after I presented and like they asked me the questions, and I was like, oh my god, I just had like such a bad feeling. And when I went back into the room, they told me my grade, and it was like the lowest grade that I had received in my entire degree. I'm not someone who likes to brag, but like I had been doing very well up until that point. Like I was just generally received like top grades or like close to it. Yeah, I don't say that to brag about myself. It's just to kind of give people a little bit more context as to why I was like really bothered by this experience and why it was so hurtful. And I don't mean like when I say like, oh, you know, you're gonna get like a B instead of an A. Like it was far below all of that. I passed, but it was far below. Considering all of that, and I'm also not saying this was like the best paper I've ever written. Like there were definitely other weaknesses with it, but like I just, when I saw this guy's face, I was just like, he has it out for me. And just like I said in the previous point, like I never want to assume something was racially motivated, but like because of the comments that this external guy was making about my project, like the issues that he was taking with it, that I was focusing on Black women and Black American women specifically, like I was like, I don't feel like I can say that this was not a factor in me getting the grade that I received. Like generally during my bachelor's degree, I don't feel like I ran into too many issues with like I don't feel like professors maybe like graded me down because of me, my ethnicity. I mean, there also wasn't the opportunity most of the time because most of the exams were like anonymous. It was definitely the exception, I will say that. But it stuck with me for sure. Yeah, it was not a good day. So we have come to the end of this video, and if you made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. And I guess I'll just kind of wrap up by saying that I had a lot of positive experiences in Denmark. The more negative experiences I had, they were thankfully more like microaggressions. But if you are someone like me who prefers to be a little more under the radar and not receive so much attention, I think that maybe is something to consider, especially depending on how you present yourself. The experiences that impacted me the most negatively, I want to also emphasize that they were the exception rather than the rule. I met so many nice Danish people when I was in Denmark. My advice, however, for any Black person or person of color thinking about moving to Denmark is to find other Black people or other people of color that you feel comfortable with to kind of support you. I think many of these experiences would have been a little bit easier for me to handle when I was living there if I felt like I had a good support system of people who could relate to me a bit more. I had lots of really nice friends there, don't get me wrong, they were really nice people. By chance, because of like the demographics of the university I went to, like none of them were Black, and I think it was sometimes a little bit lonely, even if it's just one other person or two other people that can relate to you a little bit more. I think that can be a huge help. I would love to hear about any of your experiences in the comment section. If you are a Black person living in Denmark and maybe another person of color living in Denmark, if you experience similar things, different things. And also if you are someone thinking about moving here, visiting, and you have any questions, I'm also very happy to answer them and try to help as much as I can. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.